DMV Hoop Session presents the 2024 Capital Hoop Summer League, showcasing the best high school basketball in the DMV.
And welcome to DMV Hoop Session, your place for all things high school basketball right here on SASN TV. Noah Schubert alongside Skylar Nelson bringing you a recap of the 2024 Capital Hoop Summer League, hosted once again at DeMatha Catholic High School. And Skylar, first off, I just want to say that it's always amazing covering the Summer League, and I know I had a great time, and I want to ask you, I mean, it's just so great covering this for SASN TV, being back at DeMatha with Capital Hoops.
Yeah, Noah, it was definitely a great summer. Just seeing a lot of just high schools from public to private in the DMV area just battle it out over the summer. Even with AAU in between, it was really just enjoyable, and just seeing the players grow and evolve was just a really good experience.
Now, the Summer League, of course, is a long regular season, but it all culminates into the playoffs, and that's really what we're going to focus on here to start off is our playoffs, and beginning with the quarterfinals. It's the final 8 teams that made it all the way through the regular season, those top 24 teams that qualified for the playoffs. First game was an absolute blowout. Bullis dismantling the Vikes of Whitman. That was 75-48 in favor of the Bulldogs, and really there's not much to discuss there. It was Adrian Stevens and Eric Ryba doing their thing, but I want to talk about more that second quarterfinals game, a rematch of last year's championship, DeMatha and the Tenley Tigers. Tenley, they made it into the playoffs as the final seed as the defending champions after a 4-4 regular season, had to be drawn out of a hat, and yet, Skylar, they really gave DeMatha a run for their money.
Yeah, they most definitely did. I was at the championship game last year, and even though the game was close, it seemed like DeMatha kind of choked towards the end. So to see DeMatha really just come back, especially too with guys out there on the floor like Jamal McKnight Jr. was stepping up. You had Jacob Wallace, Ashton Meeks, like that three guard trio out on the floor really just solidified it for Cade Sebastian and Cole Bowser to really score and get into the paint and really just get into the mix. And then you had Derek Daniels on defense just really dominating. So definitely all of those cards came into play for Jackson Reed, and they just weren't ready for it. And it was just really good to see and watch, really see DeMatha really rise to the occasion, because this isn't the first time that they've been featured in the championship before for the Capital Hoop Summer League.
Yeah, and I mean that it seemed like that those should be the two teams that are back in the championship game, but only one could come out on top. And the Tenley Tigers, they were bolstered by the return of Jaden Fort, had a fantastic game, scored over 20 points for Tenley, but it was, as you mentioned, Jamal McKnight Jr. with the heroics. JJ Massaquoi put Tenley up by 1 with mere seconds on the clock, and with 1.1 seconds left, the inbound to Jamal McKnight Jr., the long distance 3. And that's all she wrote. Jamal McKnight Jr. sent the DeMatha Stags from the brink of elimination as the undefeated 1 seed into the semifinals with one of the most memorable shots we've seen in the entire Summer League.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially too, even last year, even in one of the games, DeMatha's good for coming through in clutch moments. Like, just for example, Jacob Wallace, he shot the 3. Well, it was actually Ashton Meeks. He shot the 3 during the Paula 6 game. Nobody knew that was going to happen. There were only like 10 seconds left on the clock. So DeMatha is known for really just putting the staple. Coach Mike, he does a great job of putting those guys out there and really just having them navigate and talk to one another and being leaders out on the court.
Now, in our other 2 quarterfinals games, it was John Carroll against the Seahawks of South River, and Aiden Abel led the Patriots in the win there. And finally, it was the Cavaliers, C.G. Woodson against Spring Mills. Spring Mills, one of the 2 non-DMV teams coming out from West Virginia, and they made it all the way to the semifinals. A 74-61 win over C.G. Woodson put them in a matchup against Bullis. But now moving on to our semifinals, DeMatha and John Carroll, 87-71 in favor of the Stags, and it was a triumphant return of Ace Meeks to the starting lineup. 28 points for the senior guard in that return to the semifinals. Had only played 1 game in the regular season, and then he came back when it mattered most in the semifinals and finals and absolutely dominated. Hit 5 threes in the win over John Carroll. And DeMatha, they rebounded too much. Their defense was too strong, and it proved too much for an upstart John Carroll team.
Yeah, John Carroll is a team that's still growing. I covered them a couple of times throughout the Summer League. They're a team that has a lot of heavy hitters out on the floor, but I think consistency is something that they're still working on, especially going through the winter season and just overall just trying to get those pieces together. They were 11-13 last season, which wasn't the best record, but it was something to walk away from out of the MIAA in the A region. So they're still a team that still is looking to figure out where people fit and really just execute out on the floor.
And our second semifinal game, Bullis against that Spring Mills team. And even without both Adrian Stevens and Eric Ryba, it was Bullis that was able to come out on top behind Christopher Richards, putting up 19 points, Angelo Dickerson 17, and Xavier Skipworth, the freshman, put up 14 points for Bullis. And they were able to come together with kind of a almost a practice crew, because without your top two scorers, you figure, well, who's going to step up? And they had Dickerson, they had Richards, they had Skipworth, and they were able to come together and take down Spring Mills. And one thing that Spring Mills had been utilizing was a very shallow team. They only really had 5 or 6 guys who contributed minutes for the regular season, and that came back to bite them in the semifinals, and they were no match for Bullis' speed and their depth, even though they didn't have their top 2 players.
Yeah, absolutely. Bullis this summer, I would think, is one of the most strongest teams that was very small. Something that I kind of learned, especially talking to Coach Kelly. He was telling me, a lot of the guys were playing AAU and EYBL over the summer, which took away from their summer league talent. However, a player that really surprised me this summer in stepping up is definitely Angelo Dickinson. Like, he really stepped up, and he was a Capital Hoops All-Star as well. So just seeing the dynamic, he's a young player still trying to navigate and find his way out on the floor, but in the guard position, he really sits pretty well, especially too, like you said, he didn't really much so average, but he scored 17 points that game. But just being able to contribute while the leaders are stepping away to play EYBL and AAU, that is just very huge for him this summer.
And in that championship game, it was a battle of private schools, DeMatha and Bullis, WCAC talent at its finest. And as we mentioned, it was a shorthanded Bullis team. Eric Ryba was out playing in Germany, and Adrian Stevens, I believe, was in the private circuit. And it was the DeMatha Stags, in making their 4th consecutive championship game appearance off of the loss last year. They took it all, won 68-50 over Bullis, a total true team effort. Jacob Wallace coming home with the postseason most outstanding player. Everybody contributed for DeMatha in that championship game. Wallace played great. Meeks played great. You had Charles Thomas III dominating down low. No Bo Daniels for DeMatha, yet they were still able to come out with that victory. And Mike Jones' squad, your 2024 Capital Hoops Summer League champion, right back where they belong, as they've shown in the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I thought it was really great to see DeMatha win, especially on their home court, where the league has been playing all summer. Like I said to you before, DeMatha is a team that will always deliver. They may have their moments, they may go through their challenges, but one thing that I found, especially with Coach Jones and just the team in general, is they will talk it out, go through those issues, and really just figure out the changes that they need to make to succeed out on the floor. They're both DeMatha and Bullis, they're nationally ranked. Bullis is nationally ranked in the top 40 out of the entire country, which I found outstanding, honestly, for a team in Maryland, especially throughout the DMV with a lot of talented players. Definitely seeing, Bullis, I feel like Bullis, if they had some of their key players out on the floor and definitely like the core that we see in the winter, it definitely would have been a matchup that would have been closer in scoring. Now, DeMatha, they came out this summer. We've seen DeMatha play over a 4-year course now. Definitely seeing, Jacob Wallace, Ashton Meeks, Jamal McKnight Jr., Cole Bowser, Kate Sebastian, Charles Thomas III. We've seen these players deliver, and we've seen the talent out on the floor. But I always do wonder as well, what does it look like with a fully rostered Bullis team?
And we're going to see a fully rostered Bullis team going into the regular season. But now, turning our attention to the Capital Hoops Summer League regular season, we're going to talk some names, some players, some teams that stuck out to us. And when it comes to the individual players, I absolutely love watching Aiden Abel out of John Carroll. The way he developed put up 21 points per game in the regular season, was a Capital Hoop Summer League All-Star. And as a rising junior, to see how much he's grown as a 6'4" guard, he showed off the defensive capability. He could shoot the three. He was aggressive down low. And I think that, as you mentioned, John Carroll coming off of a somewhat disappointing season out of Baltimore, they're going to be back for the next couple years, led by Abel and some other players. Caden Chiney, Fayline, and the Artist Battle are going to come together to create a fantastic group for the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. One player that really stood out to me this summer was Caden Samuels from Bishop McNamara. Like, he is really dominant, definitely a defensive force, and definitely really just has outstanding offensive presence. Like, as a 6'5" guard, he's very dynamic out on the floor. He has various offers this summer from a lot of major schools: Kansas, Georgia, Louisville. One thing that really stood out to me this year is he was also the 2023-2024 WCAC. He was on the first team. So that was something to me that really stuck out to me. And just seeing him not only navigate through AAU, but also still trying to be there for Capital Hoop Summer League was also to an accomplishment. I know that it can be a battle and a force, him playing for Team Takeover, then also coming back and, helping his team out for the championship win. But I definitely feel like he is a star value to that Bishop McNamara team.
And him and Prince Alexander Moody, a couple of high-ranking prospects in the class of 2026. And now also I want to point out a dynamic duo from St. Albans, Grant Polk and Jalen Wills. While they didn't have the postseason success that they wanted, both of them put up over 30 points per game in the regular season. Absurd numbers, and you gotta be excited for St. Albans going into the normal season, that you have Polk and Wills who just absolutely dominated during the regular season. But after that, we'll turn our attention to the teams that stuck out to us. And I want to look at the public school circuit, because Yorktown was a team that sparked my interest going into the Capital Summer League, and they finished 5-3. But as a public school making their first appearance in the Summer League, they had a great appearance. And I think that overall the public school scene, even though we had private schools that came out on top, it was the public school scene that surprised me the most, especially coming out of DC and Northern Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. Cordorzo is really a school that really stood out. I definitely feel like this year they really dominated, more so than the last 2 years that they've been playing in the Summer League. They were able to they blew out Sandy Spring this year, 97-59, and really just seeing their players step up and really dominate scoring-wise was pretty exceptional this summer. And then also seeing them, go up against the Patriots this summer, and then even though they lost to DeMatha, still taking that team on was just really outstanding for them as a public school, and then trying to play into that private school sector as well.
And as you mentioned, that one loss at DeMatha, but they went 7-1 during the regular season. Cameron Young, 20.4 points per game, put up 5 assists and over almost 4.5 steals. And he's someone we're going to be watching going into the season. But we had a fantastic slate for the Summer League. We had 50 teams, largest Summer League that we've ever seen. 2 teams from out of the DMV. We had a team from Pennsylvania, Chambersburg, and we had Spring Mills coming from West Virginia. And we had the chance to sit down with founder and CEO of Capital Hoops, Mark Stern, to talk about this year's Summer League, the expansion, the future, and what he thought about this Summer League as a whole.
Now, as you mentioned, you have 2 teams from out of state, or out of the region, I should say, West Virginia and Pennsylvania coming through. The largest pool that we've ever seen, 50 teams. I mean, the expansion of the Summer League over the last few years since the pandemic has been monstrous. Yeah. So what does that say about the future of the league, seeing how successful you're able to be with 50 teams and draw teams from out of the DMV?
I mean, every year it's kind of a wait and see kind of situation, kind of see who reaches out to me and who has interest and wants to play, and then try to figure it out from there. Obviously, we have 2 locations now with Annapolis Area Christian. It's possible there could be an additional location. I mean, every year there's just logistics we got to figure out. And, DeMatha is obviously kind of the central staple hub, but we've had other schools who have reached out who are potentially interested in hosting Summer League. We got a lot of teams that want to get in who aren't in right now. So it's always possible we could grow even more, but you got to have enough manpower and enough people to kind of see the vision and are able to kind of help me uphold that, which is, which is tough. It's a huge undertaking to put something like this together. It takes a lot of energy out of me, and just got to be surrounded by the right people. I got a great team right now, but if we grow, you got to grow that team. So, the future we'll see what the future has in store.
Yeah, so I actually was able to have a conversation with Mark Stern after the Capital Hoops All-Star game. One of the things that I really got to ask him was kind of what his goals were for the Summer League this year, and that was to bring as many teams here as possible to DeMatha, but also to still trying to incorporate those fun things that really just get more fans and attract more fans to Capital Hoops. That's one of the reasons why he was able to find a gap between the schedule to have the All-Star game, which I thought was really good for Capital Hoops fans to see, but also for the DMV area to be engaged in. He was able to bring teams that weren't able to play a full season of Capital Hoops, but into like the All-Star game, for example, the dunk contest and some of those types of events. Just being able to see those players just come out and really just show their talents was something that I really enjoyed, and really just allowing the players to just really just see themselves, and also to see the things that they can do and expand on that, work better, and just being able to build those connections. We saw kids from Bishop McNamara and Bullis and DeMatha on the same team, Jackson Reed, talking, trying to figure out what dunk they wanted to do in the dunk contest. I felt like that was very, just bringing the DMV community. I think that's something that Mark really wanted to put an emphasis on this summer, but also too giving those public schools their shine. The WCAC for private schools, especially between DC and Maryland, can be very competitive, and sometimes is the only thing that is truly looked at. And for Mark to really put those schools in there like Spring Mills and Cadorzo, just really putting an emphasis on them this season, that just proves that they are just as good. And just seeing that this season and seeing his goals this season really just play out, even though DeMatha won on their home court. I mean, it's DeMatha. I definitely feel like, it was accomplished this summer.
And Mike Jones is inevitable. And Skylar, I don't think I could have said it as well as myself. And also with the DMV Live happening at DeMatha, just an absolutely full summer. But that'll do it for us on our end. It was another fantastic Capital Hoops Summer League. And for Skylar Nelson, I've been Noah Schubert, bringing you our recap and our thoughts on the 2024 Capital Hoops Summer League. You've been watching DMV Hoop Session right here on SASN TV.
DMV Hoop Session presents the 2024 Capital Hoops Summer League, showcasing the best high school basketball in the DMV.